It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Bet smarter with daily advice from America's leading handicapper, Lee Sterling of Paramount Sports on the Locked On Bets podcast. Follow Locked On Bets today on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts. You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we have a whole lot to catch up on. So I'm your host, your pal, in the kitty copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Shows on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Please join the Discord. If you're in a Discord, there's a link for it in the show notes. That's definitely where you can find me most often, hanging out with the community there. We are having a lot of fun this time of year. But let's jump into it. The biggest news coming off of Wednesday was Patrick Peterson signing with the Vikings. 1 year, $8 to $10 million, depending on incentives, and there's a lot of takes on that. So let's talk about what we think about that. They got a corner veteran presence, all that stuff. That's going to be most of the show. I'm going to have the guys from Locked On Cards come in and talk to me a little bit about it. We'll debrief from that as well. But first, there's some other odds and ends I want to wrap up. I want to get that out of the way so that we can spend the rest of the show on Patrick Peterson. So first, the league year turned over on Wednesday. So all of the contracts that expired after 2020 officially have expired. All of the signings have officialized now. It's no longer that weird tampering. We've shaken hands, but I could still balk on it. So Dalvin Tomlinson, Rashad Hill, and Chad Beebe actually are all signed as well. Chad Beebe did come back and re-sign. He re-signed for the veteran minimum. So that's $920,000. A lot of people were really upset at this signing, which I think is odd because he's signing for the minimum. So the thing about the minimum is not only that it's a relatively small amount of money, right? But it's actually negligible, because if you were to not sign Chad Beebe and sign somebody else in his place to come into the 90-man roster and compete in camp or whatever, even if you don't think that guy's going to make the team, which, let's be honest, it's not a sure thing for Chad Beebe, you'd have to pay that guy some sort of contract, and that minimum might be a little smaller, but the only way to get cheaper with that roster spot is to sign an undrafted free agent or something, and if that guy makes the team, by the time you need the cap space, it'll still be $500,000 or whatever the minimum is. So the actual opportunity cost, I guess, of Chad Beebe, the opportunities that you are giving up on by signing Chad Beebe are not opportunities that you're interested in. So it doesn't matter. I'm not too excited about him coming back. I was never a huge fan of his as a wide receiver 3. I think he belongs more as a wide receiver 5, 6 kind of guy, a reserve that comes in to spell a guy, run a couple reps out of the slot. And I think that's where he's best. His drops issue has always concerned me. His general lack of athleticism has always been concerning to me. And he's always going to have that sort of ceiling that he bumps his head on. But bringing him in for camp to see if he can't make the 90-man roster, it's hard to have too much of a problem with that. Ifeadi Odenigbo, speaking of restricted free agents for the Vikings, Ifeadi Odenigbo, his restricted free agent period has expired. The Vikings decided not to tender him. He went off and he signed with the New York Giants for $2.5 million. I went on Locked On Giants to talk to Patricia about that. You heard from her yesterday. So if you're interested, go check that out. We talked a little bit about Ifeadi and why I'm going to miss him. But he goes and finds his new destination. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about really quick before we get into the Patrick Peterson stuff was void years. So this season has sort of been the season of the void year. And void years have become this really popular tool this particular year in the NFL. I think because of the unique cap situation where we're in kind of a cap crunched year in 2021 where it's gone down, and then it's going to explode with TV deals in future years. So it's really encouraging teams to get really reckless, to kind of borrow a lot from future years to set up this year. The Vikings are no exception. They've been doing that a lot. The Saints have been doing that a lot. The Cardinals have been doing that a lot. A lot of teams have been doing quite a bit of void year shenanigans. So void years are basically, think of them as blank years where you don't actually expect the player to be on your team, but there's still a year of contract with no money in it, but it literally only exists to spread out cap hit more, to spread out signing bonus cap hit more. So if you sign a player to, let's call it a $15 million signing bonus. And let's say it's a 3-year deal. So that would be $5 million, $5 million, $5 million as signing bonus prorates over the life of the contract. Now, let's say you tacked 2 void years onto the end of that. You're not adding any extra money. You just are you're keeping them quote unquote under contract for 2 more years, but you're going to cut them at the end of it. Now it's $3 million, $3 million, $3 million all throughout all of those years. So you've saved $2 million in each of those years. The problem is you're going to have $6 million at the end of it that you still owe. So when that player leaves at the end of that 3 years, in the 4th one, you get a $6 million dead cap hit. So you're borrowing $6 million in a way from that 4th year to help you out in the preceding 3. That's the point of void years. And the Vikings used that with Dalvin Tomlinson, so his 21 cap hit is actually only $6 million. So those are the little odds and ends I wanted to mention before we talk. We're going to spend the rest of the show now talking about the new cornerback. Patrick Peterson joins the Vikings. So here's his contract, right? $8 million base salary. That's his regular salary. And then he has 2 incentives for $1 million each to make up the last $2 million. The first incentive is a playing time incentive. He has to play 95% of the snaps. He played 98.83% last year, according to this Ben Gessling tweet that I will link in the show notes that explains all this. So he played almost all the snaps. 95%, you'd have to miss a couple of games with injury. So if he gets injured, he misses a couple games or something happens and he misses a couple games, he misses out on that incentive. That will count as a likely to be earned incentive because it happened last year, because he beat that number last year. The cap is basically going to make the Vikings make sure that they have space to pay out that incentive in order to be cap compliant. So basically it's money that you have to worry about this year. Now, if he does end up missing it, you get that $1 million back next year. And conversely, there is a not likely to be earned incentive on this, which is all pro. So he wasn't an all pro last year, but if he's an all pro this year, he gets $1 million from the Vikings that the Vikings don't have to worry about making cap space for this year. But if he hits it, they will have to next year, and then they'll have to pay that out. So you can think of it more as a $9 million cap hit. That's going to be the actual cap hit that he counts for now. And then if any surprises happen, like he misses out on the playing time incentive or he gets the all-pro incentive, they'll deal with that next year. Now, Patrick Peterson generally, so he's a little old, right? He's kind of on the end of his career. He's only signing 1-year deals now, right? This is the retirement tour year. He had a phenomenal career with Arizona. He was a perennial all-pro type, like total superstar, right? And then in 2019, he gets popped for a PED suspension. He sits out 6 games. He comes back, sucks for 4 games, and then is better for the rest of that year, as you'll hear Alex and Bo talk about in the interview that we're about to have. So then 2020, he comes in, he totally struggles. There might be some assignment things. There might be some other stuff. So luckily for me, both Alex and Bo were available to talk like the second this news broke. So I hopped on a call with them and got that interview, which I'm going to show you in a little bit here. And then at the end of the show, we'll debrief about all the stuff we talked about there. But first, I want to talk to you about your car. Of course, all these NFL teams are being real irresponsible with their money, but you don't want to be irresponsible with your vehicle. Don't put things off till the last minute like the Vikings are doing with their Thielen restructure or their Harrison Smith extension. Make sure if you have a problem, you're on it. And if you need a part to fix that problem, head on over to rockauto.com. They have this awesome catalog. Whatever part you need, just enter your make, your year, your model, and they will sort out everything. Make sure you're getting a part that is compatible with your car. That's very important and difficult to figure out sometimes, and they'll help you out with that. And unlike brick and mortar auto stores, they're not giving you a marked up price for being a retail customer versus their wholesale buyers. Everybody gets the same price, and that means you stand to save $1. So head on over to rockauto.com, and in how you heard about us section, make sure you let them know that Locked On sent you, because if you don't, I'm going to have to start tacking void years onto my life, and I don't want to do that. Rock Auto, amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. It's also time to talk a little bit about Built Madness. So we've been doing this bracket over at builtbar.com. You can also find it at bar_built on Twitter. What's the best flavor of Built Bar? We're doing a bracket. Today's matchup is salted caramel versus cookie dough chunk. I don't think you're ever going to compete with cookie dough chunk. I think this is a blowout. I don't even love salted caramel myself. It's not my favorite flavor, but cookie dough chunk, I mean, come on. If you think you want to go vote on that, head on over to builtbar.com or bar_built. If you want to buy some Built Bar, try it for yourself. Enter promo code LOCKEDON15. That's LOCKEDON15, all one word. At checkout, you get 15% off of your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off of your order at builtbar.com. You need some help squaring away your NCAA, your March Madness bets? Head on over to the Locked On Bets podcast after you're finished with this one. Your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling will give you daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favored, Lee Sterling's lock of the day, and everything to help guide you through this wonderful sports season of March. It's the best sports month of the year, right? Follow Locked On Bets, brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get your podcasts. So, with all that stuff out of the way, let's talk to Bo and Alex of Locked On Cardinals. All right, everybody, to get the scoop on Patrick Peterson, I'm here with both guys from Locked On Cards, Bo Brock and Alex Clancy. Thank you both for joining me. So the Vikings signed Patrick Peterson, 1 year, $10 million, broke about 15 minutes ago as we're recording this. So I just want to know your initial reaction as Cardinals fans.
I mean, initially snap judgment was, that's it. Like the total amount was kind of surprising that it was 1 year, but I thought, and we had talked about, the Cardinals must have offered him something close. And I don't know if he was just done and he wanted out. The Vikings aren't necessarily a contender. So, I mean, there are rumblings around Tampa.
Careful. Be nice.
They're not. They're not. I mean, like contender, like top tier, like he could go somewhere and potentially win a Super Bowl, like Tampa Bay. There are rumblings around him going there. Like it's just a weird mixture of team and contract number, in my opinion.
It's a weird, like a weird fit, but I think there might be something to just like playing with Zimmer. There might be something. I remember there being some rumblings in previous years, previous off seasons that could have been nothing, but I mean, I don't know. Mike Zimmer and Andre Patterson and that defensive staff do have somewhat of a reputation around the league.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it being a fit. As far as P2 is concerned, I think it was a money grab. It was a money grab, but at the same token, it wasn't him going to Jacksonville where they're in a complete rebuild. I mean, this was a Vikings team that was in the mix with the Arizona Cardinals at the end of the 2020 season, vying for that 7th and final playoff spot, with 3 weeks remaining in the season. So they're not completely, I mean, I'm not going to come from the angle Alex did. I think that they're closer than no, Patrick Peterson, at his age though, I mean, what's he have left in the tank? He had a rough season last year. He get bit a lot by the penalty bug, and he's no longer the guy that opposing teams just shy away from any longer. But can he turn back the clock? Can he get with a guy and team up with Mike Zimmer, who's been known to have some pretty ferocious secondaries, and turn back the clock on this? He's only got a few more years remaining in the NFL.
My question for you guys is schematic, because it seems like the Vikings are trying to play a very Alabama match quarters type thing. They even got an Alabama coach in the building this year. So what is Patrick Peterson best in? Man zone, match? Where does he thrive? I mean,
I think he's better in man, but the thing is with him is he's not a hard hitter. Like, he's a push out of bounds guy. He doesn't like really to hit too hard. He's not.
It's very unzimmer.
That's not really his forte. But with the different scheme, here's the thing: is with Patrick Peterson to back him up. I mean, he hasn't had a whole lot of help in the last 5 years. They haven't really had any sort of wingman for Patrick Peterson, so he's had a lot of brunt put on him, maybe unfairly, and maybe in a new scheme, in a fresh uniform, he'll revitalize his career. But he's not a big time hitter. He's fine in man. It's just he's not a speedster. You can't keep up with speedy receivers anymore. It just comes with age. It's not a knock on him. It's just the evolution of a human being.
Yeah,
as they get older.
And it's the consistency week in and week out, because we did see flashes of the old P2. I mean, he shut down DK Metcalf on Sunday Night Football. There was one was called back due to penalty, but DK Metcalf, who was terrorizing the NFL last year, he was shut down pretty well by Patrick Peterson. And then, Patrick Peterson struggled with Kenny Golladay when he was playing from the Detroit Lions. So it's just kind of, you don't get the consistent, from week 1 to week 16 effort that you got from Patrick Peterson, because Father Time continues to show to be undefeated in this league. And, but I will say this, last time Patrick Peterson wore purple, he was pretty good at LSU.
It'll be interesting to see what the Vikings ask him to do, if they ask him to kind of be that numero uno linchpin type guy that they had asked of like Xavier Rhodes, a few years ago, or that the Cardinals have been asking, back in the Bruce Arians, 2015 days in those defenses. But I guess, I don't know. Do you have a over under like B+? Do you guys think that this will work out? And you can be honest with me. This is a safe space. I'll delete it if I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you're going to get the best of Patrick Peterson this year. So 1-year deal, he's going to be 32 when next season starts, when the 2022 season starts. If he wants another contract, he's going to go B to the wall all year. I mean, it's been tough for him. We give him a pass for the 2018 season because it was one of the worst teams ever put together in NFL history. But then he cheated. He got popped for PEDs for 6 games.
Right.
Came back. He was rusty for 4. But then the tail end of 2019, he was actually good. He was vintage Patrick Peterson, at least 80%. And last year was so up and down with Chandler Jones going out. Like, you can get a B or B+ effort from Patrick Peterson. Different scheme, offensive potency that, at times, I guess, it's such a Jekyll and Hyde offense over there, but at their best, they're one of the most potent offenses the Vikings are in the NFL, which
when it works.
The Cardinals struggled with that, with a lot of 3 and outs, a lot of very quick offensive possessions that, aging veterans didn't necessarily lend kindly to when you have to go back on the field so quickly.
He's a starting caliber corner. I firmly believe that. Is he gonna live up to the $10 million payday? That's probably going to be one Sunday, a lot of frustration from Vikings fans, and then another they're going to be celebrating when he has a good day against Devontae Adams potentially. I don't want to, I'm not saying that's going to happen because very rarely that ever happens against Adams. But I think that with Peterson, he's at this point in his career, he's got that puncher's chance to have a good day.
That makes sense. We'll have to see how it all shakes out, but it's a really, really interesting signing for a whole bunch of reasons. Bo, Alex, thank you guys so much for taking the time.
Of course, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, folks, BetOnline is your one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. Of course, this is the holy grail month of March. You have basketball in full swing, baseball's coming up, got to get your futures bets in and all that. Of course, there's March Madness, NFL free agency, all sorts of awesome stuff going on, and BetOnline has you covered. And I hope you cover. At BetOnline, you can find all the scores, odds, and news that you want. You can also bet on stuff like reality TV or award shows, anything under the sun. Go check it out and browse their gigantic catalog at betonline.ag. It's free to sign up. Just go on your mobile device, on your computer, whatever, and make a free account there. And then when you actually make your first deposit, make sure you enter the promo code Locked On, all one word, Locked On, and it'll give you a 50% welcome bonus. That's promo code Locked On for a 50% welcome bonus at betonline.ag. So let's talk. Let's kind of philosophically dissect this Patrick Peterson thing. Now, as I'm recording this, it's only been like a couple of hours, so I'm not going to plant my flag on this particular thing just yet. My initial reaction was really, really hyped. I've always loved Patrick Peterson, obviously. I think I was probably a little too influenced by name recognition, and we'll probably dial that back as I learn more and more about the thing. Definitely dial it back after that conversation with Alex and Bo, though. First of all, how dare Alex calling the Vikings not a contender? What does he know? But I think that the idea of, are they a contender or not comes up a lot in these conversations, and I think that misses a lot of the point. Because I don't think most teams are thinking, well, if I'm a contender, I should do this, but if I'm not really a contender, maybe I shouldn't do this. I don't think that any team in the league thinks that way, unless you're in a super, super extreme of rebuilding where you're like, okay, we're just trying to get these young guys along and limp through this season because we're all in a lame duck year. If you're like the Lions this year or something, the Jags last year, where you're just going, we just kind of hope the rookies look okay. Other than that, everybody else is trying to transform what they have into a contender and get better the best way that they can. Somebody asked this, I think it was Khaled in the Discord asked, hey, do you think that this is an all-in year for Spielman and Zimmer considering the way that they're behaving? And I think, the idea of contender, not contender, are they all in or are they rebuilding? And those are the two things I don't think those two things really apply to more than 5 teams between them, maybe in a given year. Everybody else is just, I don't know, trying to win as many games as they can. Like as a coach or a player or a GM, you only have so many years in the NFL, and throwing one away because, we'd just be 7-9 when you can maybe make one move or two and add 3 wins and maybe, have a chance in the postseason. I never really understood that idea of throwing away a season where you think maybe you have a risk of being average, so we might as well just give up. I've never really understood it. And I think instead of thinking in that dichotomy of like, are they or aren't they a contender, I think we should think of these things as cost benefit, right? Because what is the cost of going all in? What is an all-in season, right? If you think about it like a true all-in season, right? The 2009 Vikings, where you're relying on players who are absolutely in their last year of being good, right? And Patrick Peterson might be one of these players in the last year of being good. But A, we don't know that for sure, as surely as we did with Brett Favre, right? And B, there's not a lot of those old guys on the team anymore. They've actually gotten rid of a lot of aged players, and they're actually relying on a lot of young talent, like, Cameron Dantzler and Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins is 32. Age is not the thing with him at all. But if you think of the cost of like a quote-unquote all-in season like that 2009 one, the cost is that it will be completely untenable to win next year. And that's because you've borrowed so much money or because you're losing so much old talent or et cetera, right? And I don't know if that quite applies. The 2022 Vikings will probably be in a similar spot in free agency where they've got these holes, they've got these players to replace. Maybe they want to throw 1 or 2 extensions out there depending on what happens. And they're going to try to build something that can be competitive next year. And they've always kind of wanted to say, no, we don't want to just pile 3 years worth of resources into 1 year and go all in for that 1 year at the cost of 2 other years not being able to compete there. No, we want to build something that is sustainable, that can constantly compete. I don't want to sacrifice entire years for the sake of making another year marginally better. That's an inefficient move to me. I think that's my best argument against tanking, to be honest. And I think that's a disconnect between me and a lot of Vikings fans, is that I like to think of things in cost benefit and not in, well, does this match their outlook of how much of a contender they are? Because if you only make moves to improve your team when you think you're a contender, you probably only think like 6 teams in the whole NFL should be like making moves. And obviously that's not the way it works. It's a completely separate reality. And I prefer to stick to this one, as painful as it can be sometimes. So let's talk about the Patrick Peterson thing through a lens of cost benefit, because his cost is apparently controversial. He costs $9 million against the cap. If the incentives go away, we don't think they're going to go. That'll change by 1 or 2, but he costs $9 million against the cap. Now, a $9 million cornerback contract isn't that much. And I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, they overpaid for name value. But did they really pay that much? He will rank, as it stands right now, he ranks 20th in among cornerbacks and how much they're going to make in 2021, unless some of the new contracts are structured in a way I'm unfamiliar with. But he should rank 20th or close to that in 2021. So if he can be a top 20 veteran cornerback, and you throw the rookie contracts out, right, because those are harder to like value cost benefit wise. So if he's a top 20 veteran cornerback, you got your money's worth, right? If you want to kind of use cap cost as a proxy for expectation, like we would do with draft pick. And that's the cost, $9 million of cap space that could have gone to something else. A lot of people are frustrated it didn't go to a guard or whatever, I'm sure. I think the real opportunity cost is that you got Patrick Peterson and you didn't go get a Dory Jackson or somebody else who is out on the market who maybe could have been had for a similar deal. Anybody who is signed now and makes less than $5 million, technically, if the Vikings were willing to spend $9 million on a corner, they probably could have gone and gotten that guy. And that's somewhat of an opportunity cost if you want to get real hindsighty about it, although I have my own problems with that heuristic. So for top 20 cornerback money, you get Patrick Peterson, whatever he is now. Now, you're not getting 2017 Patrick Peterson, and I don't think anybody has any delusions about that. I would be really surprised if the Vikings thought they were getting 2017 Patrick Peterson. So the idea that they are just like splurging on just name recognition, like they don't research these guys, I think is pretty funny. And I honestly think, again, if the contract can be used as a proxy for the Vikings' expectations, if we can look at the contract and say, okay, that's what they expect from this cornerback, you're not getting 2017 Patrick Peterson for $9 million, right? Corners make $16 million if they're Byron Jones or whatever. So I don't know what you get with Patrick Peterson. This is the part, and this is why I can't plant my flag, right? Because I don't know if top 20 cornerback money is an expectation that I think Patrick Peterson is going to meet or not. I just don't have that answer yet. Hopefully I'll get to it, later on in the week or next week or something like that when I can think about it more, look at tape, kind of do my whole research routine. But I feel pretty confident that that should be the heuristic. And, what has he lost in speed, right? If you have a cornerback who isn't that fast anymore, you can deal with that, right? Like the Vikings did with Terrence Newman a bunch of years ago. A lot of people bring that up. Now, this isn't quite that extreme of a thing, and also Patrick Peterson's a lot more expensive than Terrence Newman, so it's not a perfect analogy. But I think the idea that, hey, can Mike Zimmer get something out of a cornerback who's not as fast as he used to be? And I think yes. And I think the idea that he won't adjust to a cornerback having lost a step because Xavier Rhodes struggled. He tried 3 different adjustments, and those adjustments didn't work, and you hope he learned from that. But the idea that he just kept asking Xavier Rhodes to do the exact same thing, I do not believe is correct. So the interesting question, and the one that I have to go look into here, is how is he going to do in something like man match, where he has to play a lot of man techniques? How much experience does he necessarily have? Is he familiar with, match concepts, or is that something he'll have to learn from scratch? And as, an 11-year veteran, that's not that big of a concern, but it's something to think about. And, what are his matchups going to be? Are the Vikings going to put him on the Terry McLaurins, or are they going to put him on the second guy and put Cameron Dantzler there? This puts a lot of pressure on Cameron Dantzler. If Cameron Dantzler can be that CB1, I think Patrick Peterson is an absolute home run. And if he can't, then this whole thing might look kind of rough. And I feel pretty good about Cameron Dantzler, but you can only ever be so sure of that. So there's a lot of other questions to answer. And I guess as lame as it is, all I can really do is defer those to a time when I've done a little bit more research about the thing. But as an initial reaction, I think being aggressive at cornerback and being aggressive at defensive tackle are the ways to fix the defense. And that defense sure did need fixing. Even after you account for injured players coming back and stuff like that, and you account for the ideas of regression and stuff like that. I mean, the 2019 relatively healthy defense struggled at corner and struggled on the defensive interior. These are problems that needed to be addressed, and the Vikings have now gone and addressed those things. They still have work to do on the offensive line. They still have some work to do in the secondary at the safety position, so the work isn't done yet by any stretch of the imagination, and we'll see how much draft capital has to go to these needs now, which is always, you don't want to be shoehorned like that, and we'll see where they end up after all this cap-wise and all that too, which I actually don't know. They've got other moves maybe clearing more cap space on the horizon. Who knows how much they're going to make or what other moves they have up their sleeve. But in terms of this one, with a cost of $9 million and not knowing what opportunities or what players that $9 million cost represents, right? We don't even know if that does or doesn't cost getting a guard. If it cost getting a guard to get Patrick Peterson, yeah, I can see the frustration there, but there's a chance that it doesn't. And benefit is veteran corner, leadership figure, which the Vikings sorely needed, and hopefully you get some decent cornerback play as well, even after you account for whatever age is going to have done to him at 31, which he will be when the season starts. So we'll talk more about this as the week goes on. I'm Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL. The show is Locked On Vikings at Locked On Vikings on Twitter. You can send the show an email, lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. If you want, there's a Discord in the show notes. Make sure you go check all that stuff out. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. And as always, Skol.